Good morning, and thanks for joining us for an episode of She's a Force of Nature, where we highlight different women working throughout the Department of Natural Resources. My name is Alyssa Yapel. Did I already say that? I might have said that. That's okay. I'm going to introduce you to who else we have on the webinar today. We have two folks from our Natural Resource Women's Network, Katie Gerber. She's with the Division of Forestry, and Jackie Hyder. Jackie and Katie are going to be helping with any questions that you have. So if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. And then our presenters today are with the Division of Wildlife. So we have Kelly Schott, who is up at McGee Marsh. Kelly, you'll be hearing from her in just a second. She's a wildlife communications specialist. And we also have Sarah Zaleski with us. Sarah is out of our Findlay district office, and she's a wildlife research technician. So before we get started, though, I'm going to have Katie tell you just a bit about what the Natural Resource Women's Network is all about.
Hi. The Natural Resources Women's Network is a group of employees here at OhioDNR who have come together to provide networking and professional development opportunities for the women who already work here. But we also focus on getting the word out to young women about all of the amazing career opportunities that OhioDNR has to offer. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And our first presenter is Sarah Zaleski. So Sarah, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and present.
Good morning. Let me get my presentation going here. All right. Can everyone see that and hear me okay?
You're good.
All right. So I'm excited to talk to everyone today about being an employee with the Division of Wildlife. As Alyssa said, my name is Sarah Zaleski, and I'm a wildlife research technician with the Division of Wildlife here in Findlay. And I'm originally from Norwalk, Ohio, and I grew up there my whole life. I ended up going to Hocking College to get my associate's degree in wildlife management, and then I decided to go on and get a bachelor's degree at the University of Rio Grande and eventually a master's degree at Bowling Green State University. So here at the Division of Wildlife, I am in the wildlife management section. A lot of people think of the Division of Wildlife and think that everyone is a wildlife officer, and that's not the case. There's a lot of different sections to the Division of Wildlife, and I am, as I said, I'm in the wildlife management section, and there's also a fish management section, and Kelly's in the communications and I&E department, but I'll let her talk about that. Here at the Division of Wildlife, part of my responsibilities are doing wildlife surveys, and the pictures I'm showing in my presentation are some of the different pictures I've taken while doing the work that I do. So some of the surveys that I conduct are butterfly surveys, looking for the endangered Karner blue butterfly, different bird surveys such as ring-necked pheasants and different waterfowl species, lots of different surveys throughout the year. We look for otters along and signs of otter along riverbanks in the wintertime. I also do a lot with disease surveillance with the Division of Wildlife, whether it's with our deer herd looking for chronic wasting disease, or if we have some wildlife that die off, I collect those and send them off to the lab for testing. I also help out at the different wildlife areas in Northwest Ohio. I help with prescribed burns that we do to keep habitat in good shape for wildlife, and I planted food plots and things like that that are used on wildlife areas. I also work in the office somewhat, doing wildlife management reports and more administrative work that goes along with the surveys that I do. And you saw some of the pictures on there are also from nest box maintenance. We have different nest boxes, mostly for peregrine falcons, but there's some other types out there as well that we do regular maintenance on. And we do have a camera on one of our peregrine boxes down in Lima that we recently put up to watch them as they nest this year. I was always interested in being outdoors. I grew up outdoors and spent a lot of time outside. And when I was a kid going to Girl Scout camp, that was my favorite part of the summer. And I always remember walking through the woods and thinking, oh my gosh, there's all these plants and they must have a name. Somebody's got to know the name to all these. I wish I knew that. And I didn't learn as a kid, but when I went off to college, that's what we learned. And I thought it was just so neat that I eventually found a career that I loved and got to finally figure out what all those cool things in nature were. So that really it drew me starting off as a kid and being outside. I think I really took up a passion for wildlife and nature, things like that. But getting to where I am wasn't really a straight line. I wanted to be a marine biologist growing up, but I decided I didn't want to move to the ocean. So I went to school to become a massage therapist, and I got my license to do that work, but I decided it really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I tried to look into new careers and see what I wanted to go back to college for. And I went to a local community college and took an aptitude test to see what would be a good fit for me. And it came back as on the list there was park ranger and there was forester, but those seemed kind of cool, but I really wasn't familiar with those jobs, and so they didn't really strike me as something I wanted to go for. But one day I was on the Division of Wildlife website after I got into deer hunting, and I was looking around on there for some information, and I came across the careers page, and one of the careers was wildlife research technician. And I read the description of it and all the things that you did with that job, and I thought, oh my gosh, somebody will pay me to do that work. That's awesome. That's what I want to do. And so I started on my path to going to college for that. I looked into a college that had a good program for wildlife management, and I went from there. And I was 24 at the time, so I was considered a non-traditional student. I was a little older than most of the students that went there, but and it was a little bit intimidating because I was one of the few girls in the program. There were other girls there, but it was majority of boys in my college classes, and a lot of them seemed to know a lot more than me about wildlife stuff and hunting and being out in the outdoors and nature. But I didn't let that deter me. I used their knowledge. I soaked up their knowledge, and I ended up. I was lucky enough to graduate at the top of my class. So I managed to get through it, and I didn't let my lack of knowledge in the beginning deter me. But here at the Division of Wildlife, one of the things I do as well is assist the public and landowners. A lot of times people call because they have an issue with wildlife or they found some wildlife that they think is injured or sick and they're concerned about it. So they give me a call, and sometimes it's a bat in their house, or sometimes they have too many geese around their farm pond at home or things like that. So I get to work with people and explain to them why the wildlife is likely doing what they're doing, and different ways that they can help the situation and work, or should they live peacefully with wildlife. So, and I also get to, doing some of the other work I do, I get to make the habitat better, especially working out at wildlife areas, doing the habitat management work out there. I get to help provide good habitat for wildlife so that hunters and nature enthusiasts and everyone who wants to enjoy the outdoors and wildlife can come out and see plenty of it there. So just trying to go through my list here real quick, make sure I'm covering everything. So one of the things that Alyssa asked me when she asked me to do this webinar is what motivates you? And I think one of the things that really motivates me is seeing ecological success stories. So when you see some habitat that's not ideal and really needs to be improved, and you actually do that improvement, and whether it be through having prescribed fires or doing some brush cutting work, and there's a lot of different things that can be done, but to see that habitat come back better and provide a better habitat for wildlife, and a lot of times it's a better looking habitat. Maybe it's just some brushy area that to the people who may not know wildlife management as well, it may not seem like anything special, but just when you see improved habitat, that's something that really motivates me to want to do this job and continue creating healthy environments and ecosystems throughout Ohio. So being a woman in the wildlife management field, as I said earlier, I was one of the few women in my college classes, but actually when I got my master's degree at Bowling Green State University, there were quite a few more women. I think women actually outnumbered the men in my wildlife management lab there, which is great to see, but I've been lucky enough to have people who supported me and mentored me along the way, and made sure that I had the skills that I needed to get the job done. So when, I guess my advice to anyone interested in whether it be wildlife management or natural resources type field, or just any type of field, immerse yourself, or at least try to introduce yourself to different topics, and find someone who's willing to show you how. If you know someone who knows how to do something that you wish you knew how to do, don't be afraid to ask them if they can show you how, because they may say no and then you're not out anything, but they may say yes and you may discover that you've found your new favorite hobby or your new passion in life. So always be open to going out of your comfort zone and looking for those new experiences in life. I think that's really important. And something that I really enjoy about my job is that it changes frequently. Not all natural resources jobs are the same as mine, but when you're working natural resources, you kind of are dictated by the seasons. That's one thing that's really neat. Even if you don't particularly enjoy one thing that you're doing, you can always just wait for the next season to show up, and you'll be on to something else. And I know spring and fall are my two favorite seasons, just the changing of the seasons and the different jobs I get to do. That's always fun to experience, and just every year you just go through new phases and as you go through the new seasons. So with that, I am going to let Alyssa or Katie take it back over, and we'll see if they have any more questions for me.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Sorry, I'm trying to send the feed live and it doesn't want to switch, but the only thing that I'll mention right now before having Kelly do her presentation is we did get a question from Lisa asking whether or not this is recorded. Thanks for your question. Her daughter is in school and can't attend today, but wants to watch it back. So just for everybody out there, if you do want to check this out at a later point in time, it'll be uploaded to our YouTube page. So I put the link in the Q&A, but you just have to search OhioDNR on YouTube and you can find all of our past webinars. But Kelly, I will let you do your presentation, and then if we have questions at the end, we'll take them at that point. There you go, Kelly.
Okay, great. So you should be able to see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. All right. So my name is Kelly Schott, and as Alyssa said earlier, I am a wildlife communications specialist. Before I delve into that, I do want to say that Sarah, Zaleski, our research technician positions are probably some of the most exciting and interesting positions because they get to do such a variety of things. I do a variety of things in my job and I do enjoy what I do, but she's really active, participating in a lot of habitat management and working with animals, which is something a lot of kids think they want to do. And quite honestly, those jobs are few and far between. I think there's a research technician in each district office, or District 3 office might have 2. And then there's a few research technicians in Columbus as well. So I don't know, I would guess throughout the state, in the Division of Wildlife anyway, there might be like 10 research technicians available. So it really is a limited position as far as, you know, kids think they want to take a job and get out in the field and do all this fun stuff, and their jobs are really cool, but there aren't that many of them. So always keep your avenues open and, you know, think about the future. So. Well, I just wanted to start off by saying I have 19 years of state service. That state service, that 19 years has not really been contiguous. It has been I've bounced around a bit. It was maybe more of a direct path than what Sarah took to get where I am. But I did bounce around to several positions. And so I'm going to give you just a brief bio and start with where I am now and work backwards. And then actually when I go to my college career, I'm going to start with college and move forward. But for now, yes, I am at Magee Marsh Wildlife Area. And if you have not heard of Magee Marsh, it is our only wildlife area that has a visitor center. It is our most visited wildlife area, and that is due to those little birds that you see on the screen. That's a prothonotary warbler. There's about 36 to 37 species of warblers that can be found migrating through Magee Marsh Wildlife Area in the spring. And people from all over the world, somewhere between 60 and 90,000 people, come to Magee each spring to witness this fascination we call spring migration. So with that being said, there's a lot of people coming to the visitor center, coming to Magee Marsh Wildlife Area, and hence they have a communication specialist there to deal with the issues, the public, answer questions, do programming, all those kind of things. So that is why I am at a wildlife area. All the rest of our communication specialists are in a district office, and they have a little bit different job than what I have. At Magee, again, I'm kind of responsible for overseeing the visitor center. I do programming with school groups or other kinds of groups that come to Magee for field trips. I prepare for spring birding season and how we're going to deal with those crowds that we have every year. And then I also get to help out with the work unit at Magee Marsh. So I do get to get out in the field and do some things, some maintenance work as well. And I also, of course, do a lot of other things that I would consider statewide responsibilities, like help with the Wild Ohio magazine, provide information for our social media outlets, and I get to do some surveys, maybe not as involved as what Sarah gets to do, but I do get to do some surveys. So that is what I do at McGee, and I have been there since 2016. Prior to that, I was at Seneca Conservation District, which is a soil and water office. That's a county position. And I was an education coordinator and a wildlife specialist. The wildlife specialist was very similar to what we have. I worked very closely with the Division of Wildlife and with lots of landowners, increasing habitat on their properties. And I really enjoyed that job. It set me up for this communications specialist position rather well, because I was constantly talking with people. And I cannot reiterate enough that in order to get involved and get into, it's not just wildlife, but into any field you're interested in, you need to communicate with people and you need to know how to talk with different people. And Sarah was right when she said, be outside your comfort zone. That's a good thing. Yes, it does not feel good to be outside our comfort zone, but you will grow from it and you will learn from it. And that is a valuable experience to take you into the future. The position I had before that was at Castalia State Fish Hatchery. And this was an ideal position for me at the time because we had 2 young children and they were in school by the time 2006 rolled around. And this job at Castalia allowed me to still be at home with my children for the summer. And I worked in the spring and the fall at the hatchery. But I did all of the things that the fishery technicians do at the hatchery. You can see here in this picture, we're actually preparing our steelhead eggs to be transferred into trays into the hatchery building. That's an iodine bath to help cleanse them so from any diseases they might possibly have and keep the hatchery disease free. The experience that I had there and the people I worked with at Castalia was phenomenal. I never a day in my life thought I would be working with fish and actually enjoy it. I have fished growing up as a kid numerous times. I went fishing with my dad a lot, but it was something that I just did because other people did. I didn't really have an interest in fish per se. But being at the hatchery, I learned so much, and I really learned there at the hatchery what it means to have positive coworkers around you that form a team, because everything at the hatchery that we do, more or less, you do with somebody else. It's very intensive work and it's more of a team effort, and it was a great experience. I value that tremendously. Then I took this little side job at our house, and I'm going to call myself the director of child development for raising our 2 children. Once I had our first son, it was a very difficult decision to leave the permanent position that I already had with the Division of Wildlife as a wildlife technician. But I wanted to be at home and raise the kids. And my husband and I felt it was the best for us. It was the best choice. I'm not saying everybody should do it. It just at the time for where we were in Ohio, in Northwest Ohio, we didn't have a lot of family around. It was just us. And we just felt comfortable with me staying at home. It was hard to do, not gonna lie. It was hard to leave that job that I had because you went through all this schooling to get to this point and all these stepping stones to reach that full-time position, and then I backed away from it. But I wouldn't change that in a million years. As you can see, even though I actually left the career force, I got back into it. And so I don't want any young girl or young woman to be afraid, to change things up, to do what's right for you. That's the idea, is you have to look out for number 1. So, and that's you. Prior to leaving the Division of Wildlife, all of my other positions were at McGee Marsh Wildlife Area. I bounced around there from 1994 to 1999 in several different positions. I started there as a seasonal. And then I was a volunteer eagle coordinator. It was a really neat job. Still a seasonal position. I was upgraded to a full-time tech position, and then I took a part-time position as a tour coordinator because that's where I thought I was going to stay while I raised my kids. But we decided, again, my husband and I just decided that it was better if I stayed home. So that's what we chose to do. So that is kind of me going backwards. Then I'm going to highlight my college path. I was at Ohio State University from 1988 to 1993. When I got to Ohio State, all I knew is that I loved to be outside. I liked animals, and I guess because I didn't have a lot of knowledge about careers of what I could do with that, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. And that was a seemingly very hard path. I wasn't prepared for it, and led me to basically bounce around Ohio State to the different colleges and schools to figure out what else I could do, because I wasn't in on this path for being a veterinarian anymore. So I actually stumbled across the School of Natural Resources and the wildlife management degree about the middle of my sophomore year. It was still plenty of time for me to get set in and take the classes I needed to take to graduate. And all those classes, all that is good thing, and it prepares you, for being out in the career, out there trying to get a job in your career. But I'm going to stress to you that the experiences you have outside of college may be more valuable, more important to you than what you have while you are actually taking those college classes. And what I'm talking about is summer jobs. And so I kind of briefly listed my summer jobs. And you can see my first summer jobs didn't really have a whole lot to do with wildlife or working out in the field. I opted to be a camp counselor one summer. Then I stayed at Ohio State and took summer classes to catch up. The first job that I had sort of in the field was at Cedar Creek Lake, and I was a seasonal there for the Army Corps. Started giving programs to people, and that is kind of when I realized that I like to teach people. I like to teach people about the outside world, and that's kind of what drove me for my career path. But I also, sort of like Sarah, I also wanted to work in the field. So I was always a girl, even at a young age. My mom would make fun of me because I was all about making a pumpkin pie with her, but I wanted to be in the garage with my dad learning how to change the oil. And so I was always sort of an on-hands girl wanting to learn different things, and it didn't really matter what it was about. And so that led me, actually, after I graduated in June of '93, I got a job at Killdeer Plains Wildlife Area, which was a seasonal position there. And then I had another position at McGee, and that's how I ended up at McGee and then moved forward from there. But what I want to talk about now is sort of change gears a little bit, and I want to talk about the lessons that I learned from these two jobs that I had with the Division of Wildlife, the two very early on jobs I had. The first one was at Killdeer. I was not prepared for this position. I will be completely honest. I was super timid and super nervous about going there. I knew I didn't know nothing about tractors. There was so much about equipment I didn't know, and I was nervous. I had support people around me that were pushing me to do this, and so that gave me confidence, made me feel like I could do it. But when I got there and saw these tractors, especially the tractor in the top picture that I was going to have to learn how to run, I was intimidated, there is no doubt. And it was scary. People there helped me and taught me, obviously, how to get on this equipment, and that worked out really well. I also had these great experiences of trapping wood ducks, banding wood ducks, and learning, more on the wildlife side of things. I guess you'd call it research. And I really loved that. But I left Killdeer with this feeling that I was still in a man's world. It felt like I was being tested. I didn't feel comfortable with myself or really being at Killdeer Plains. And to be honest, I was kind of set on not never working for the Division of Wildlife again. Even though I really enjoyed what I experienced here, I still had this sort of want to teach people. And there was it was actually the wildlife officer at Wyandotte County at the time stopped in Killdeer, and I was kind of explaining to him, and he looked at me and he said, you know what, you need to go somewhere else. You need to give the Division of Wildlife a chance, because there's so many paths you can take. This is all you've experienced is Killdeer and what you've learned here, but there's so many more paths you can take, and you need to be exposed. And he encouraged me to put in for a job either at Pickerel Creek Wildlife Area or McGee Marsh wildlife area, particularly McGee, because he knew that there was a lot more public involvement there. So that's what I did. And I headed to McGee. At McGee, I was introduced to these, to a lot more new kinds of equipment and different tasks. Some of these tasks to me were scarier than others that I tackled at Killdeer. And this is one of them. This is me bringing a bunch of boats back behind me. I'm in the front boat. It's a V-bottom boat and it's got an outboard motor on it. And then we hook up 6 John boats behind. And what you see me bringing back in are hunters from the wildlife area. So McGee Marsh has a controlled duck hunting experience. These hunters put in and got drawn to be a part of this. And this looks great because it's in the middle of the day and I'm bringing them back, but you have to step back and realize that when I'm taking them out there, it's 5:30 in the morning and it's completely black. So learning your way to navigate yourself in the marsh at night with an outboard motor, something I wasn't super familiar with, took a lot of patience and time and effort. And I'll be honest, all of these experiences that I had at McGee, here is me identifying ducks, aging them, and determining what sex they are. They were all great experiences. And this last one is me participating in an eagle banding, a bald eagle banding. But what I learned most about McGee, and this is what I want to leave you with, is I matured. Yes, I was feeling like I was in a man's world. Part of that was because I was not mature enough. And I learned that I needed to reach, I was afraid to talk to men and afraid to say that I didn't know things. But what I learned at McGee was that I needed to reach out to them. And just like Sarah said, I needed to grasp their knowledge and use that for myself. So I was super fortunate at McGee, and I had coworkers who took the time to teach me these things. And at the same time, I was starting to mature. But beyond all that, I had a supervisor that I could talk to. And I'm not saying you can't talk to every supervisor. You can certainly talk to any supervisor. But Dennis, there was 3 particular times that stick out with me. And if I had not said these things to him, I wouldn't have got the answers that he gave back to me. So that's why I'm sharing these 3 instances with you. But one of them is that when I first came to McGee, I was really nervous about being there. I knew some of the things I was going to have to do while I was there. And I said to Dennis, I said, I'm not sure I'm your person. Like, there's got to be people out there who know more about this than me, you know, and this is not going to be easy. And he looked at me and he said, if you can listen, if you can follow directions and then go and do them, he's like, we're going to be just fine. He said, I will teach you everything you need to know to do the things here at McGee. And that was a huge relief to me. So that was, you know, that kind of set the tone for my beginning experience at McGee Marsh. Next, the second time that I have this memory of coming back to my supervisor, I got a 4-wheeler stuck in the marsh. They specifically sent me out on the 4-wheeler because they thought I was lightest, and I was going out there to try to determine whether or not we could take a tractor out into the marsh. Now, a little bit about marsh management. You have to draw down, you have to take all of the water out of a wetland unit periodically. And when you draw it down, it's a great time to get the tractor in there and sort of manipulate the habitat in certain areas. And that's what they were wanting to do. So they sent me out on this 4-wheeler, and they were doing that because I was the lightest and I had the least chance of getting stuck. Well, I got the 4-wheeler stuck. And when I got off the 4-wheeler, I looked at the 4-wheeler and it was barely stuck. I tugged at it, I pulled at it, I did everything I felt I could do, and I still couldn't get it unstuck. So this meant that I had to walk back to the work unit, and the first person I saw was my supervisor, Dennis, and I walked right up to him and I said, listen, I said, this is a little embarrassing to me because I got it stuck, it's barely stuck, but I'm not strong enough to move it. I know you're going to go out there and you're just going to pick this thing up, move it out of the way, and I'm going to be on my way and everything's going to be fine. And I was really pleased with Dennis's answer, and he looked at me and he said, if you can't physically attack a problem, if you can't physically move the 4-wheeler by yourself, then none of us should be doing that either. You know, yes, men are stronger, but he was always, he was always under the expectation that we needed to work together. And that was for protection of his employees. He didn't want anybody straining their back, anybody ruining anything. So he did not feel at all bothered by the fact that I came back and got the four-wheeler stuck and he was going to help me get it unstuck. He was not at all bothered. He made me feel very comfortable about that. Again, I was very appreciative. The last time that I had with Dennis was actually when I was getting hired for the full-time position. And I straight up said to Dennis, I said, you know, I don't want to be hired just because I'm a female. At the time, they wanted more female in permanent positions within the Division of Wildlife. And I said, I don't want you hiring me just because I'm a female. I said, I don't want to be that statistic. I don't want to be that number. And he looked at me and he was like, you know, he said, I've learned from you being here. I've learned that there are lots of things that females are very capable of doing and do better than men. They have an eye for when things may need to be done, or they're very good at, you know, maintenance records and that kind of thing. And he said, and then I've realized that you have a purpose here and you have a job to do. And Dennis was really exceptional at realizing and putting all of us, I'm not saying me because I'm a girl or the other guys I worked with because they were guys, but knowing what our personal achievements were, what we excelled at, and giving us that direction and giving us the ability to do those things. And I was super grateful for that. That really made me grow as an employee, and I was very fortunate for the experiences that I had. And so I hope for all of you that you come across a boss like Dennis. And I've had super bosses since then. It's just, I think it was a combination of me actually being mature enough to understand how to communicate with the supervisor. I think that's why Dennis and I got along so well. So of the lessons that I've learned, what I want you to think about is these 6 points. Experience is invaluable, and it can start as young as high school. And it doesn't mean that you're going to do this for the rest of your life, but if you have an interest, try to find something to support it. A volunteer position, you know, a summer job, get that experience, find out if you like it. Diversity. Once you find a career path and you're in college per se, and you find a seasonal position that is supportive of your college education, don't feel like you should go back to that maybe the next summer or the summer after that. Yes, it's comfortable to go back to the same position, but you need to have diverse experiences within that career path that you're taking. So don't be afraid to bounce around and get different jobs in different areas. It will do you wonderful things in the future. Once you're there, and this goes just in daily life, listen more than you talk. And follow directions. That was something that was super helpful to me, is when Dennis told me, if you listen to me and I will explain to you what you need to do, and then you follow through on it, we're going to get along just fine. And there's a lot of value in that. I'm not saying you can't talk to your supervisor or, you know, talk to him if you're nervous about doing something, or if you think something should be a little different, but make sure you listen. Listen to what he says or she says, and remember those things. And then my suggestion to you is help to create a healthy work environment. And you may be too young to understand this, but a healthy work environment is so important. And what I mean by helping to create a healthy work environment is be that positive person in your work unit. Don't be critical of others. Be supportive, try to help them if they're struggling. And I know all this sounds like, why wouldn't you do that? You'd just be surprised once you get out there and working in a career. Sometimes people become very backstabbing, and I would suggest that you stay away from that. And then I want you to know that if you want to be a mom, it's okay to be a mom. I think females in general, as you're growing and maturing, it's something we struggle with. It's something you feel like it's a conflict to have a career and be a mom, or, you know, whether you just want to be a mom, it's okay. It's, you know, without females in this world, we're not going to have children. So kids are a great thing. Lastly, just a few conclusion pieces. I want you to realize that men and women are physically, mentally, and emotionally different. We shouldn't feel like we're trying to be like a man, because we're not. So we need to embrace what we are. We need to use those talents and express them in the field. And then use these differences between men and women to create a stronger work unit, team, and agency. Because again, just as Dennis said, women and men look at things differently. And without having, if you just have one part of the picture, it's not the whole picture. So women are very valuable. But then you also need to understand that you have to prove yourself for the position you want. You shouldn't expect anything because you are a woman. You have to prove it. And the same would be true for a young man. He has to prove it. You have to show that you follow the directions, that you are interested in experiences. And that is really all I have for today. If anybody has any questions, that would be fine.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly and Sarah. I've thoroughly enjoyed learning from both of you. Kelly, going off of something that you said, you mentioned the importance of summer jobs and experience and diversity, and I couldn't agree more with you. I do want to mention, just give a little shout out to our internship program, which is a great way to also get experience at the department if you're in college. We open our applications up in the fall. So I think around the from October to December, you can apply, and that is for our summer internship program. We also offer a lot of summer or seasonal jobs as well that you can find on careers.ohio.gov. We did have a question that I want to ask both you, Kelly, and Sarah. What are some positions that someone fresh out of college would qualify for with the Division of Wildlife?
Perfect. I can answer first, and then Sarah, you can fill in if you'd like. Many of the positions within the Division of Wildlife, right out of college, you will qualify for them as far as actually meeting the qualifications. Some of our positions, even to be a wildlife officer, you, I believe at this point in time, still only have to have a 2-year degree, an associate's degree in a related field. Obviously, it's always more beneficial to have a bachelor's degree. Just more schooling is always looks a little better. So you would qualify for those positions within the Division of Wildlife, many of them. Our biologist positions are really the only ones that you need a master's for, but any entry-level position you would qualify for. So like Sarah's research technician, even a wildlife communications specialist position, wildlife technician, any of those you would qualify for. But again, you have to understand that you're going to need the experience to support it, because the interview process is tough. And so in order to present yourself best in that interview, you're going to have that experience so they can see that side of you.
Thank you. Do you have anything, Sarah, to weigh in on?
Well, I'd largely have to echo what Kelly said. Many of the positions with the division, you do technically only need an associate's degree for, but for the most part, nearly, there's so many people who work for the division who started out as a seasonal employee, and I myself worked 5 seasonal jobs before I got into the position that I was in. And when I wasn't doing a Division of Wildlife seasonal job, I was doing a seasonal job somewhere else for another university or something like that. So coming out of college, you're probably really looking at those seasonal positions, but I also know people who have gotten into some of our more administrative positions, answering the phones and talking with the public. They got those right out of college. And if you're 21 and you're interested in being a wildlife officer, that's another one that you may be able to get into right out of college.
Thank you both. And, you know, even if it's a seasonal position, you may be looking for a full-time position. Just keep in mind the importance of the networks and the connections that you can build, you know, with a seasonal position and the skills that you can gain too, if you are younger looking for some of that work. But another question that we had is from Hope. Thank you, Hope, for joining us. What is the thing that you like most about what you do? And if it's okay, I'll send it to you first, Kelly, and then go to Sarah.
Okay, perfect. As I said in my presentation, is I really love to teach people about the outdoors and what they can do outside, provide them with new experiences, maybe hunting, fishing, bird watching. There's so much out there to offer for a lot of people, because we've sort of gone into this more of an inside way of life where we're on screens and that kind of thing. There's so much outside that you can really be taught. And that's probably something I value most about my position. Don't get me wrong, like working with animals and doing the quote unquote fun stuff is great. You know, I did a river otter survey in the end of January, and I loved it. Loved being outside and, you know, doing that part of it too. So the variety, I guess, would be my other answer to that.
I agree with Kelly. I want to say, you know, it's working with the public and sharing my knowledge that I have. Can you hear me okay? Okay, it said it's that I'm muted, but just wanted to make sure. So I do love working with the public and sharing everything I know about wildlife, because you have these moments where you're like, they get it, they understand, which is really neat. But I'd have to say my favorite part is working with waterfowl. Kelly's right in that I have a job that a lot of people don't, you know, they don't get quite as much field time as I do with the Division of Wildlife, but I do get to get out sometimes and do waterfowl banding, and this past summer I got to assist the biologists with catching swans and things like that, and to hold a duck. They're just like the softest, most cool animals. So I'd have to say that's probably my favorite part, when I get to get out and do waterfowl work.
Awesome. And you both have talked a lot about some, you know, surveys and research projects that you've done over the years. We might know what your favorite one is, Sarah, but I'll ask anyways. What is your favorite project that you've worked on? And I'll just do the same thing. I'll send it to Kelly first and then go to Sarah.
All right. So you did see the picture, if you recall from my presentation, of being part of eagle bandings. So when I did that volunteer eagle coordinator position, that was in 1995. At that time, there was only 27 nests in Ohio, maybe 25 nests, somewhere around there. Now there's over 700 nests in Ohio. So we don't have a hands-on program with eagles anymore. And we still track their population, but we don't have a hands-on research project. What you saw in that picture was me being part of the actual banding. So we used to actually send a climber into the nests, and they would lower down the eaglets before they could fly down in a bag. And we brought them down, we banded them, extracted some blood from them. But those bands were a way that we could track them. You could put potato tags. We had potato tags. Some of them actually had satellite telemetry receivers on their back, and we could track them that way. So I spent a lot of time doing that. The year that I was there, that we were actually banding eagles out of the nest, we were just putting bands on. We weren't doing the potato tags or the radio transmitters anymore, but I still got to be a part of all that, and so it was really cool. A little scary. I did slip up at one time because the climber wraps the raptor's feet together so they don't get injured coming down. But when they get down to the ground, we would have to unwrap them and hold on to them because they had to be individually banded. They had a band on each leg. And I did, you know, this is something I felt bad, that eagles are surprisingly docile once you get them in your hand. but they're strong. And that I had just a feisty eaglet and pulled its foot out of my grip and grabbed with the talon my coworker's wrist. And thankfully, he was the person who wore his watch at the time. We still wore watches then. And he wore the face of his watch on the inside of his wrist, and that one talon hit that watch. And so he was not cut. But all I could remember in my mind was this horror story was, if that hadn't happened, something that I did could have caused my coworker some injury. But other than that, it was a super experience.
I think I will just always be in awe when it comes to the goose banding or duck banding, things like that. They are still my favorites, but not too long ago we had to move some peregrine falcon chicks. The adults had nested in a tower that had to have some construction done on it, or else there was a chance it was going to collapse. So we actually had to remove the chicks from the nest and carry them to a nest box that had been created so that their parents could finish raising them in that nest box until they were able to fly themselves. And they, like Kelly said, peregrines as well, they have those talons and they're very strong. And of course we wear gloves, but to catch them in the first place and pick them up and move them, it was very neat to get to hold them for a minute and move them to a new location, and then keep an eye on them, make sure the neighbors in the area let us know that they were doing well, and when they eventually fledged from the nest box. So that was pretty neat.
Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing your stories and experience today. If Katie and Jackie, if you have anything to add, feel free to chime in, but I think that I think we're going to wrap it up. So thank you both for joining, Kelly and Sarah. It's been a pleasure. For those of you watching, if you want to join us for any of our future webinars, we do have some great ones planned. We'll continue celebrating Women's History Month through our She's a Force of Nature program. Next week, we will welcome some ladies from the Division of Mineral Resources. And the following week, we will welcome women from our Division of Oil and Gas Resource Management. So I hope you can join us for those. Otherwise, we have another webinar series going on this month. It's back by popular demand, and that is our Bigfoot series. Tomorrow, we will be joined by naturalist John Hickenbottom to give us the evidence of Bigfoot in Ohio. And then the following week, we're going to talk with some pretty well-known hunters. I guess you can call them hunters of Bigfoot. And finally, on March 24th, we will be doing a Bigfoot hunt ourselves at Salt Fork State Park. So we hope that you can join us. Keep an eye out for new webinars that we will continue to post on our virtual programming webpage. The link is in the Q&A box. Thanks for joining, and I hope you have a great day.